8:20, we know it's against the law and dangerous to drive while holding a mobile phone. Do you think it's safe, though, to use a hands-free device while you're at the wheel?
New research has found that they could seriously affect our ability to focus on driving, and now the road safety charity Brake is calling for them to be banned. Sharon Barber reports.
Driving while using a handheld mobile phone has been illegal in the UK for a decade now. But it isn't against the law to drive while talking hands-free. Researchers, though, have now discovered that using our phones hands-free can significantly reduce our ability to drive safely. Well, I've come down to Newcastle University to find out exactly what they've discovered in their research. What they've done is given me this strap. That's going to go underneath and it's going to monitor my heart rate and breathing. They've also given me a set of goggles with two small cameras, and that's going to monitor my eye movements and see what I'm looking at on the road. While at the wheel, the researchers called me. I answered handheld and hands-free. They asked increasingly complex questions while recording my heart rate, breathing and driving ability. Overall, their tests showed drivers taking calls on a hands-free phone saw their ability to maintain speed and their steering performance decline 37%.
We can see when people start talking on the phone, they didn't even recognize the hazard they've been through, and they didn't even, stop for stop line and miss the red traffic light. And even on the hands-free, if they are into this, conversation which demand a lot of thinking into it, they can be incredibly distracted.
So we're looking at the point where you start answering the phone.
We're all getting busier and multitasking more, and mobile phones mean we can be contacted anywhere at any time. But beware, say the scientists, as their evidence shows that talking to someone on the phone hands-free is more dangerous than talking to a passenger.
When you're talking to a passenger, they're context aware. They know what's happening on the road, and they may be quiet when they see you doing a difficult manoeuvre, or they may change if they recognise there's danger on the road. But when you're talking to someone remotely at the end of a phone who doesn't know what the driving conditions are that you're under at the time, they'll just continue that station, and you'll try and maintain it even though you're getting more dangerous at finding less concentration.
The research coincides with the start of National Road Safety Week, and the charity Brake is now calling for the use of hands-free phones to be banned in cars. Sharon Barber, BBC News, Newcastle.
Well, Professor Phil Blythe, who you saw in that report, is a transport specialist at Newcastle University. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
This sort of backs up previous work from the Transport Research Laboratory, which found that people talking on hands-free phones and talking on the phone, their reactions are slower than people who are slightly over the drink-drive limit.
They are, and also they seem to miss things on the road, like road signs, sometimes miss the red lights, etc., because they're concentrating on trying to speak to someone at the end of the phone who's not aware of the context of how they're driving at that point in time.
And we saw from what Sharon was doing that it can be, really badly affected her. For example, in the simulator, didn't it?
It did, yeah. And you could see that when she was speaking, trying to answer sort of maths questions on the phone, her driving was very poor. She couldn't keep in lane properly.
Does it depend on the type of conversation you're having as well?
I think it does. If it's a very casual conversation, then maybe it's not quite so difficult. But if you're trying to make decisions, or if it's a more in-depth conversation, and obviously the person speaking to you at the end of the phone is not aware of your driving situation, whether it's an easy driving situation or rather a more complex one. And people do seem to have difficulty. We're finding probably 3/4 of them drove less well when speaking on a hands-free mobile.
The hands-free technology is built into many cars these days. Is it realistic to suggest banning it?
I don't think so, because we use it a lot. We use it on our way to work. Obviously, we spend a lot of time in congestion where we wanted to still be productive. But if people could be aware of the fact that they probably aren't driving as safe, and maybe limit their use a little more, or at least make sure they do it in situations where they're less likely to be affected by speaking while driving. And it's
what
mainly
sort of situations would that be where you're less likely to be affected?
It seems on motorways where you're driving on a simple road where you're not having to make any decisions about turning off or dealing with traffic. It's easy easier. When you're on urban roads, you're navigating, you've got lots of traffic congestion around, got to make lots of decisions, lots of road signs. That seems to be where the difficulties occur more.
Your findings, does it say to you that people are endangering both their lives and other people's lives by doing this?
I think in some cases that is true, yeah. We saw there's a wide range of different reactions to answering the phone. Some people are perfectly fine, others clearly it does affect their driving quite significantly.
But hands-free technology versus squabbling kids in the back, which is more distracting?
That's a difficult one to judge. It depends on the context and how people can process lots of information at the same time. Some people report that having kids in the back making noise is really, really significant. I know that myself, yeah.
And it is quite a significant difference between talking on a hands-free phone or whatever it is and having talking to a passenger as well.
Yeah, because if you've got a passenger next to you, they can see the road in front of you, and they can temper their conversation based on how complex the driving is. If you've got someone at the end of a phone talking to you, they're not aware of the driving situation you're in, so they won't change their conversation based on maybe you've got a very difficult manoeuvre to make. And that's where the real issue comes, I think.
It's a useful warning to us all that if you are talking hands-free, you've really got to focus on the driving.
Yeah.
Okay. Phil, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Coming up, the BBC